And then right at that same time, the big Reddit thread all about exposing FreeBirth Society like exploded. And to be honest, a lot of the things in that Reddit thread were things I already knew and was just like okay with, regrettably. Like I had desensitized myself to and become okay with over time. Like things about Emily Saldea's personality and stuff like that that were more just like trash talking. I was like, whatever. I've been dealing with that for a year and a half. It's not that big a deal. And there were things on that Reddit thread that were complete flat out lies. I know that. I know that for a fact. And there were things that I knew through the grapevine that were finally being publicized. And I was realizing a more whole truth of like some of the personal issues that happened with other women on her land. So that was like the big final straw for me, was hearing the more full deep story of like what happened with these other women that were on her land or in her community and why they all left in droves, years prior. And it suddenly all clicked, and I was just like, oh yeah, this whole organization is just not what they say they are. It's just as simple as that. At that point, I had already stepped back from my work as copywriting and doing other work for FreeBirth Society. And I was just doing the MMI mentorship, mostly because I was getting completely overwhelmed. And I was working like 70 hours a week. Now, granted, I was getting paid very well. So, like, I'm not complaining about the work to pay ratio, but it was still too much. And the standards were incredibly high and incredibly disorganized. So, I found myself crying and feeling like a failure. I felt like I was failing this incredible organization that I looked up to all the time. I was getting criticized like pretty heavily, and the reactions when I would make mistakes, tiny mistakes in the scheme of life, were horrible. There were a few emails that went out with like a totally wrong subject title that I hadn't gotten approved, or she had told me to change the subject title and then I accidentally didn't, and then the email went out. And the way she spoke to me when that happened was like if I had killed her dog. You know what I mean? Like she, like the anger and the annoyance and the frustration and the belittling. And then there was always, every time I made a little mistake like that, which admittedly was like somewhat often, okay, like I was not perfect and I made lots of little mistakes,
Well, when
but
you're working 70 hours a week and you have 2 little kids, I mean, come on, like
yeah, exactly. So like I was not being set up to succeed in many ways. It was just too much work. I was working at like 2 a.m. often. And so in addition to that, she was like frequently like kind of looming this sense of like, if you can't get this together, I'm going to fire you. And so I was always afraid, always anxious, always like fearfully submitting to whatever she wanted in fear of losing my job. And because she paid me so well, that was like even more scary. So there were there were so many elements of that. So I stepped down from my work and I was just doing the pod mentor, but I didn't quit that because I signed a contract saying that I would only get paid if I completed the entire school. So there was no like monthly pay or prepay. I was committing to a year's worth of work without getting paid till the very end.
do you think the other mentors, the pod mentors, were in that same financial situation where they all got paid at the end?
Yes, I know that that was the case. That was the same contract everyone signed. So when we all decided to leave, it was knowing that we would make $0 for the work we had put in. Um, and we were all like okay with that, right? Like we signed contracts agreeing to that. We knew what we were getting into and we knew what we were leaving. And as like frustrating as that is, and as selfish and unethical as I feel like that is on Free Birth Society's part, I feel like at least they were transparent about it. And I can understand from a business perspective why they would have done that, because they've had such crazy turnover that they needed to put something in place to ensure that they wouldn't lose people halfway through the year. But the reason why they have such high turnover is because of all the other issues I mentioned, just rampant personality issues and greed and dishonesty from what's behind the scenes to what's presented to the public, and money, 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 greed. You know what I mean? So that, like, we all decided to leave